going. Okay, thanks for the heads up there. So on our website, we have our homepage here. This talks about our upcoming meetings. We have our future meetings listed over here on the right-hand side, the information in the different topics that we're going to be covering within the next year or so. And then on our posts page right here, the posts are where all of the past meetings are recorded and stored. We have, for example, our last meeting was NetSuite budgeting versus NetSuite planning and budgeting. We have the video here, so you can watch it directly from our website. You can also go watch it on YouTube if you want. And then in most cases, we also have the slides from the past meeting also posted, and you can download the slides here and review those later on. Again, this content is free. It's not locked down or anything like that, so you can go and view it at any time and share it with colleagues. So where to find us? Also, we have our LinkedIn forum. So you can go to, again, LinkedIn and just search for Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group, and our forum will pop up there. It is a public group, but like I said, we try and keep it spam free. So if you're trying to post an advertisement of some sort, we may not allow that to go on if you haven't been a sponsor within a certain time frame. I'd like to take just a quick minute to introduce our board of directors. We are all volunteers that have been working with the Rocky Mountain NetSuite user group for many, many years now. So thank you to our board members for your continuous support. So this is me in the upper left-hand corner. I'm Corey Anderson. I'm the president of the user group and the founder of Stratos ERP Partners. Then we have our sponsorship and member chair, Margie Cominos of PlantScan Corporation. Then we have our communications chair, Mike Kackline of Vertifor. We have our speaker chair, Peggy Evliff of SquareWorks, aka Charted. So I need to update this slide because that changed not too long ago. Then we have our treasurer, Dana Larson of Dana Larson Consulting, and our newest board member who's been with us for a little over a year now. Sorry, Ryan, I have to double check. But Ryan Longnecker is our events chair of Collective Mind Technologies. So again, thank you to our board members for your continuous support in helping us keep this user group up and running year after year. So now I'm just going to take a quick minute. I'll pause. If anybody has any announcements, you can post them in the chat window. If you're shy, you can go to our LinkedIn user group and post them there. If you're not shy, you can also unmute yourself and make that announcement. Again, announcements are things like job openings or looking for a job or NetSuite adjacent jobs or something like that. So I'll pause here for just a few moments, and if anybody wants to unmute themselves or post it in the chat window for an announcement. Any announcements? So if you can't think of anything now and you think about it later, feel free to post it in the chat window or go to our LinkedIn group and you can post an announcement there. All right, we'll move on. Evaluations. So we do send out a survey. It should be sent out to you today. Please, please, please take a few moments to let us know how we're doing. This feedback is pretty much all we get for feedback from you, the attendees and the members of the group. We'd like to know how we're doing. We do act and read on the feedback from the evaluations. If there's something you think we could be doing better, or if there's specifically meeting topics that you're interested in, we want to hear about that in the surveys that we send out. So it's a pretty short survey, only takes a few minutes to fill out. So please take the time to help us make the user group better and to plan our future content. Advance. Okay. So our meeting sponsorship. So as I mentioned earlier, membership to the user group is free. The cost of our meetings is supported by 2 levels of sponsorship. We have SuiteApp sponsors and consulting sponsors. SuiteApp sponsors must be available through SuiteApp.com, and consulting sponsors must offer NetSuite consulting services and have certified consultants on staff. The consulting sponsorship slot we've kind of changed a little bit. If you or somebody in your consulting firm is interested in presenting, a meeting to the user group, then that is considered a consulting sponsorship slot, and you would get an introduction slide at the beginning of the meeting, and then you'd be able to present content to the entire group, for 2 hours. So if you or anybody in your firm is interested in doing a presentation, please reach out to well, you can go to the sponsorship page here, or you can email info@rmnsug.org, info@rmnsug.org if you're interested in sponsoring. So we do offer CPE credits. We will have 2 CPE credits for this meeting today. There will be polling questions throughout the meeting that you must answer to be eligible for the credits. You must have also registered for the Zoom meeting with your first name, last name, and email address. Make sure that your Zoom app is up to date for the polling question pop-ups. One thing that we've heard in the past is that if you are on Zoom through a web browser, it may not do the pop-ups for you. So, or you may have a pop-up blocker enabled and the pop-ups for the CPE questions may not pop up. So if you are having problems with that, you can troubleshoot that, maybe download the Zoom app or make sure your pop-up blocker is not enabled. CPE credits are free. They do take 4 to 6 weeks to be issued, so please be patient. Again, we're all volunteers doing this. And we have a new CPE sponsor moving forward. So I'd like to take a minute to say a huge thank you to our friends at NetGain for supporting our CPE credits. NetGain has come through for us at the last minute here to help support our CPE credits. And so thank you very much. We really appreciate your support of our user group. Our upcoming meetings. So in March of this year, we're very excited for this one. This is going to be AI in NetSuite. We're going to talk about built-in and external options. And that should be presented by, that will be presented by our board members, Ryan Longnecker and Mike Kackline. So make sure you sign up for that one. It's going to be a good one. And then in May this year, we'll have our meeting about workflows, aka SuiteFlow in NetSuite, and talk about workflows from beginning to end and teach you how to do that. In July is our NetSuite 101. So this is our back to basics meeting. This will be designed for people that are brand new to NetSuite, want to learn how to navigate the system, how to do some basic things. It's kind of a crash course in starting to use NetSuite. Also valuable for people that have been using NetSuite for some time. Dana always does some really great tips and tricks throughout that whole meeting. Then in September will be our customizing NetSuite. So in customizing NetSuite, we talk about custom fields, custom forms, custom printing templates, making NetSuite do things look a little bit different, and adding some customizations to help you streamline processes. So that'll be coming up in September. And then November this year is our scripting for non-scripters meeting. This is a really great meeting where Mike Kackline highlights how scripting works in NetSuite. It makes it really easy for everyday users to understand how it works. Even if you're not going to be coding or scripting, it's a really great meeting to understand the ins and outs of scripting in NetSuite. So I also want to mention that our meeting topics are subject to change. Always check our website, rmnsug.org, for upcoming meeting topics. We will have those updated and current on our homepage. We try and stick to this schedule that we've built out, but for example, today we were hoping to do a NetSuite Analytics warehouse presentation, but that kind of fell through. So we pivoted to talking about reporting and searching in NetSuite. So anyway, that's our upcoming meetings. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to our Suite App sponsor today, Charted, formerly SquareWorks Consulting. And so at this point, hopefully, Seth, you're back on.
I'm here.
Seth?
I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So, Seth, I'm going to stop sharing and I'll turn it over to you and we'll hear from Charted.
Excellent. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Thank you for the introduction. All right.
Seth,
Go ahead.
can you
Yes.
hear me? Before you get started, there is a
Yes.
problem with your raffle link. When you put in the email, it comes back with an error message and asks for a number. So nobody can enter the raffle.
Oh no. Well, you know what? I can we can get another link after I run through this and send it over. So you can
That would be
send it around
wonderful. And
after.
then,
Sure.
yeah, we'll post that. Actually, yeah, just post that new link in the chat window, and then Corey can enter it, or somebody else on the board can enter it periodically afterwards. And I apologize for all of you that are having that problem. I never actually tried to fill it out. I just saw that it looked good. All right, thank you.
Yeah, sorry for that. Can everyone see my screen okay? You should see a single slide up that says the
Not yet.
end-to-end native. Not yet?
Are you sharing?
Not yet.
I thought I was. Let me try again. Oh, I wasn't. There we go. Let me open that once more. Can everyone see that okay now?
Yes.
All right, excellent. Well, thanks everyone for joining. So my name is Seth Duda. I'm VP of Technology at Charted. I'm going to be going over a live demonstration of Charted AP automation. But before we jump in, I just want to give a quick overview of our solution. Chart is the only end-to-end AP automation solution built natively for NetSuite. And really what this means is NetSuite employees remain in NetSuite through the whole AP journey, from vendor onboarding to scanning documents through OCR, to approvals, to handling accruals, to even sending payments out the door at the end of the day. There's no integrations to maintain, there's no external systems to log into, and often no headaches trying to reconcile data between two different systems. All your data remains available and accessible in NetSuite, really just providing that single source of truth of data throughout the whole journey. Now, you may be looking at all these steps and saying, how am I going to demo all this in 10 minutes? And the answer is, I'm not. Otherwise, I'd run over about 50 minutes and I probably wouldn't be invited back again. So I'm really just going to focus on the first two steps here, which are vendor onboarding and our invoice AI. So vendor onboarding, it's really covering how to onboard a vendor efficiently and securely without ever leaving NetSuite, all through a click of a button. So I'll show you that in demo. And then second, invoice AI. We're going to talk about how bills can be quickly uploaded, scanned, and entered directly into NetSuite, taking advantage of some of the latest AI advancements in technology. Moving on to the next slide. Just want to quickly mention, right, in terms of our scale, we are trusted by over 1,000 customers globally in the NetSuite ecosystem, and we have a retention rate of over 95%. On the right-hand side, you can see some of our great customers. And then finally, we're just built for scale. We support global operations out of the box. We bring along the security controls and audit reports that organizations often require, such as SOC 2 Type 2 audit. All right, it's demo time. So I was going to say you can fill out the survey at the end. It sounds like that is a little bit, that link is broken, so I'll send one over after. But if you like what you see, feel free to reach out. You can go to our website, charter.com, and contact us that way, or fill out the survey and we'll get in touch with you after as well. But as I said, this is a really quick preview of what we can offer. These demos often last over 50 minutes, diving into all areas of the AP automation process. All right, so let's jump right into NetSuite. We'll stop sharing the slide deck and we'll jump right over here. All right, so first we're going to talk about vendor onboarding. So I'm going to go right to the vendor record to start. And typically with vendor onboarding, it requires chasing down vendors' details, such as collecting W-9s, bank details, manually entering into NetSuite. But with our solution in place, really, you start with the creation of a new vendor record, but you'll notice I'm not collecting much here. I'm collecting the company name, email address. That's about it. The idea is that we're collecting who we want to reach out to, so that that vendor can provide their information to us, to your NetSuite account, and it will all flow seamlessly back into NetSuite onto your vendor record. Once you save this vendor, right, you can send a form out to that vendor to collect those details. So what that really looks like in practice is an email goes out. This is an example of the email where you can add your own logo, own messaging, but really this is asking the vendor to click a button essentially to go to a one-time use secure form. So this is not a portal the vendor is logging into. So it's not a place the vendor is going to forget their username and password and reach out to you asking, how do I go there? It's really trying to take the friction out of the process for the vendor. So they just click a link and they're brought to this one-time use secure form. So if I click on that, it brings me to a form that looks like this. This is fully customizable, all within NetSuite, where you can define which fields you want, what data you want to collect. Here's an example where I might be collecting a W-9 document, collecting information about the vendor. I can even collect bank details down here. So at the bottom, they would fill this all out, press submit, and that data is going to be transferred directly back into NetSuite and help you populate this information on the vendor record. So going back to the vendor, let's take a look at kind of if I were to submit this, how this would show up back in NetSuite. So directly on the vendor record, you're going to notice at the bottom, there's this forms tab, and this is going to capture all of the responses that have come back from that vendor. And when I click on a response, I get to see in split screen view what the vendor submitted side by side with what I currently have on file, and it's going to highlight any differences automatically. Now at this point, I could choose to just apply those changes, which would update my vendor record automatically. I could even request more information from that vendor if they provided something inaccurately, or I could even reject this. But it's really bringing this data back into NetSuite automatically and taking all that manual work out of the mix. So you're not manually typing in details, making mistakes, or even trusting emails from vendors saying, here are my bank details, can you type them into your NetSuite account for me to help avoid the risk of fraud. Once the vendor has been updated, then typically that triggers our approval automation process where the vendor will route for approval before the vendor can be used for further transactions in NetSuite. And best of all, this is not just initial onboarding. This can be used on an ongoing basis. So anytime in the future, you come back to your vendor, there's a button at the top that says send form, click it, and it will shoot off an email right to the vendor asking to provide new details where you can then review the response side by side, similar to this. Now let's jump over to our invoice AI. So this is really, you're receiving invoices from vendors. How do they get in NetSuite? How do you extract information from them? How do you accurately capture those details as a vendor bill in NetSuite? I'm going to jump over to here. This is our AP inbox. You can drag and drop files directly on the screen, or you can simply email them in. Most invoices, when you drag them in or email them, under 10 seconds, it's going to be scanned. So as an example, if I drag one in here, I can drop it right on the screen. We're going to see this upload in real time and be scanned. But really, this is about being very quick, scanning the document, and then helping you review or automatically enter those as vendor bills. As it's scanning, it's looking for information such as the vendor name, subsidiary information, invoice number, PO number, line level details, all that's being extracted behind the scenes from the PDF document, and then getting it ready so I can review it very quickly and efficiently in NetSuite. In addition to that, if you have invoices that are associated to purchase orders and they match that purchase order 100%, meaning all the lines match, the quantities, rates, and quantities, rates, and amounts match at the line level, it will actually auto process them as long as everything matches up and create the bill for me and route it for approval for me, really taking a lot of the manual work out of the picture. For a bill that I click on to review, it'll bring me to a split screen view. So in this view, you get to see side by side the invoice on the left and the vendor bill form on the right in NetSuite. And it's really taking information from the left and populating information on the right. It actually learns how you use NetSuite and it will code your bills automatically as well. So down here, for instance, if I were to change items or expense accounts, it's going to learn that as I go. So the next invoice I upload from this vendor, it's going to look at prior bills in NetSuite and say, oh, what did you do last time? How did you code it? And it will recommend the coding for me the next time, saving me a lot of time. Now, my favorite feature of this is flexibility, right? OCR solutions, they They all show kind of an easy demo of you upload an invoice, it captures everything correctly. The reality is AI OCR is not perfect. There's always exceptions, always edge cases, and we have flexibility built into our solution, which is really powerful. So behind the scenes, still always in NetSuite, you can create something called an AI direction. And this is taking advantage of some of the latest AI technology out there in terms of natural language understanding. So in this case, I'm able to, just with the NetSuite, override certain information. So let's say I want to override how we get the invoice number out of a document. I can just describe what I want. In this case, maybe it's a utility bill where there's not an invoice number, but I can combine information on the invoice and concatenate it all together. And that would be quite intensive to do through just click and configure. Here, you just describe what you want. Concatenate the account number, invoice, month, and year. Here's an example. We save this, and these directions will influence our AI behind the scenes. So when you upload invoices from, let's say, utility bill, it automatically does this for you and captures those details. But this doesn't apply just to some of the standard fields. You can extract whatever you want from an invoice. If there's some custom information from an invoice that you want to capture at the header level or line level of the vendor bill, you can do that through AI directions. And then finally, once the bill's been fully reviewed, looks good, you press Save and Next. The powerful thing about this Save and Next, which is just, it's not a feature out of the box in NetSuite, we add this on top. We have actually preloaded the next bill for review. So if you have 5 bills you're jumping through, you don't even have to wait for the next vendor bill screen to load. We all know, like, sometimes screens can take a little bit longer than expected to load, maybe because there's customizations that are running. We load that behind the scenes. So when I click Save and Next, it immediately pops up the next vendor bill form with very little waiting time. So really powerful feature, very time saving as well. Finally, once the bill is saved, it typically will route the bill for approval. So this will shoot off emails to the approvers. This is really powerful because these emails can go to anyone in your company. It doesn't have to be a NetSuite user. Any email address you can send emails to, they can approve or reject the invoices directly from email via these buttons. And all the details necessary in terms of coding can be included on the email, such as this. To wrap things up, now once a bill has been approved, the bill can be paid. There's many ways to pay bills in NetSuite. We have encompassed this all into a single process. So at the end of the day, once the payments have been generated in NetSuite, you can come right to our interface here to release payments, select the payments you want to release, and we can send payments through ACH, international wire, printed check, outsourced printed check, so you don't have to even print it in-house. This can all be handled for you through a click of a button without ever leaving NetSuite. Email remittances go out to the vendors, and that really completes the end-to-end picture of uploading invoices, vendor onboarding, all the way to paying your vendors out of NetSuite. So I'm going to wrap things up. That is the end of my presentation, but thank you, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity for sponsoring. I will send around an updated survey at the end. Yeah, that wraps things up. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you so much, Seth, and thank you, Charted, for supporting the user group by sponsoring this meeting. Looks like a really great AP solution. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn this over to Dana Larson to begin the main part of our presentation. We will have, as a reminder, we'll have CPE questions pop up randomly throughout the meeting. You'll need to answer those questions if you are interested in those CPE credits today. So Dana, I can see your screen. It looks good, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Corey. And I did just add the presentation to the chat so that you can download that and follow along if you'd like on that document. And the reason I did that is I'm going to start out in the slide deck for the first few slides, but then I'm going to pull up NetSuite and go kind of side by side, and I'm only going to be showing you NetSuite. So if you want to follow along with the slides, you could have that up on a separate screen. Hopefully that'll work for you. Sometimes it's hard to talk through a slide and then show NetSuite. It feels repetitive. So let's just go ahead and start out with the slides. I have a couple challenges today. I'm coughing, and so I will try to mute if I cough. So far, so good. And my internet, the power went out where I am just a few minutes ago, but I think we're okay. So I'm going to ask for forgiveness in advance here if if anything comes up. But Corey, no, he can manage it if I just drop off. So, but if you see me mute, I'm coughing. Okay, next, let's get started. There we go. So what are saved searches? In NetSuite, they are just database calls, basically, where you can search into the database and get the data you want directly out of the records. They can be used on the dashboard to define the results of a reminder, key performance indicators, KPI scorecards, KPI meters, trend graphs, custom search portlets. Those all use saved searches. So they're very powerful. You can create email alerts to let users or even customers or vendors know when a transaction reaches a certain state or when there's incorrect data added. I use that a lot for data integrity in the system. I write saved searches to say, tell me when this occurs because it's not supposed to occur, so that it sends me either an alert or I have it on a dashboard reminder, and it really helps keep the data clean. You can also schedule work when you do a scheduled workflow. Often you use a saved search to say what data should be included in this workflow. You can create groups in NetSuite using them. You can limit items to be shown on transactions in NetSuite. So, for example, you could have something on your item list that says only these items should be available for these purchase orders if you're using this form. Like, you can get that detailed with your form customization so that you can filter what's coming up behind it. So you may have one person who can order certain items and another who can order other items. You can control that with the saved search. And I'm sure I'm only scratching the surface here with this list. Now, when to use them, because I think when I first started using NetSuite, I was like, well, why wouldn't I just use a report? What's the difference? They are very different. The reports, there's hundreds of pre-configured reports. You can make subtotals and hierarchy on reports and make them look pretty. You can also control the filter and the columns. And you can do filtering on the searches, of course, but the columns are more powerful in reports because you can say things like, I want to see month over month, and it'll automatically do that for you, where in saved searches, it's a little harder to get that. The custom report layouts allow you to control rows, which you can't do that in saved searches. It's a flat file and you don't really have access to that. And also, reports are smart enough to know the signs like debits and credits for the natural sign of an account. So when you're looking at a balance sheet, it knows that assets have a debit balance, liabilities have a credit balance, and it'll do the conversions for you. But saved searches are great when you want to join tables and go directly at the data and see exactly what is your data in the system. And when you want flat file results, if you're reporting those or exporting those for some reason, I especially like flat files for auditors when they ask for GL activity, because then they can pop that into their database that they're using for their audit instead of giving them a file that's got subtotals, because those don't work very well. And also what I talked about before, the dashboards, custom views, custom reminders, email alerts, and scheduled emails. Those are all great uses for saved searches. Limitations. Again, I talked about the signs. It'll use that natural sign. So sometimes if you're totaling things up, or it won't, you might want to use debit and credit amount as opposed to amount, because if I pull in the amount of a credit memo, sometimes that'll come in as a positive amount when really you're trying to take the credit memo off the invoice and you need it to be a negative amount. So you have to be careful with that. No expand collapse, no subtotals. You can only join one table deep. And this is probably one of the biggest limitations, I think, with safe searches. You can sometimes do some things to get around that, where you might put a custom field on the record that pulls from a table that's a joined table, so that you can then just pull it into your saved search. And you might never even display that field. You might just use it strictly to get around the limitation of only joining one table deep. The warehouse, the analytics, SuiteAnalytics will let you do more than one deep. So often if you need to, like, I call it double jump. I have no idea if that's really a word, a super technical word that I made up. But if you have to do that, you'll move to the analytics workbooks, because you can create your own data set and then create multiple layers deep. The conditional highlighting doesn't export, and we'll talk about that later. You can't merge two search result sets together, and then the dashboard portlet for searches is limited to 7 columns. So these are just the known limitations in NetSuite. All right, CPE question. First one, we're diving right in.
Okay. Let's see. So that should be launched. The question is, select which is true for safe searches. So CPE question number 1 is launched. We'll wait about a minute total, 40 more seconds for everybody that needs to answer. Okay, last chance to answer the CPE question number 1. Give you about 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to end the poll and I'll share the results. Survey says.
The answer is C. They're more flexible for getting at all of your data. Because B, you can join it with the subrecord, and they're not very formatted. So okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So now you'll see that I'm in NetSuite, and because we're going to jump into creating a search together. And so if you want, if you look in the chat, you'll see I uploaded a PDF. You can pull that down, and then I'll be following along on my other screen with that. Hope that works for everybody. And this PDF will also be posted on our website, as Corey said, along with the recording. Okay, so we're going to start with the elements of a search. First off, I'm going to tell you how to get there. You can go to Reports, Save Search, All Saved Searches, and then either click on that to see ones you've already saved, or you can say New to create a new one. The ones that you see below here are the ones that have been marked Show on Menu, and so we're going to show you that in a minute. You can also go to Lists. I never go this way. Save Searches New. Or what I like to do is add it to this new bar right here, because I often create a new save search and I don't like going through all those menu options. So this new bar is helpful. To update that, you go into Personalize, and then you can select what you want to see on the new bar. All right. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into a new save search. And all right, so when you first get here, There's lots of elements to a saved search, like the record type, the criteria, results, highlighting, available filters. We're just going to step through them one at a time. So the very first decision you have to make is the record type. And this is really the most important decision you'll make as you create them. It's daunting because when you look in here, it's all of the records in NetSuite. And so you'll see sometimes there's going to be custom records. There's going to be a bundle that you loaded, and you'll see a bunch of them. But 90% of my searches are off of the transaction record. But you can do customer, vendor, whatever record you want to go at and get the information. Remember that you can only, I'm going to click on transactions, but you can only go one layer deep. So I have an example of when, if you wanted to start at the customer record, you could reach into the transactions that the customer has, but then you couldn't reach beyond the transactions into, say, a field that's on the class record or something like that. But if you start at the transactions, you can reach into the class record, you can reach into the accounting period record, you can reach into the account record, you can reach into the customer record. So often the transaction record is going to be in the middle, and you can reach out in various directions from it. And so I think you'll find most of the ones that you create will come off the transaction, especially if you're trying to pull in like GL transactional data. So we're going to start here with the record type. I'm just going to call this I'm going to call it a customer transactions by customer, we'll say. All right. So these, you can give it an ID. I'm going to be honest, I rarely do because I rarely look them up by ID, but if you're going to use it somewhere else, like in a script, you'll definitely want one. So you can give it an ID. Public is, do you want other people to be able to see this search or not? If you don't mark that public, you're the only one who's going to be able to see it. You can also control later who can see it in this audience and roles. If you want to make it available as a list view, which is a really nice feature, when you're in, for example, if I go into transactions, sales, enter or create invoices list, this is a list view right here. And you can control then right here, you can pick the view. And so if I were to create a save searches of invoices that had exactly the columns that I cared about, and I check that box, it'll now show up as a list view. And then when I go to look at invoices, it's going to pull up that view. That's only for me, though, not for everybody else. They would have to change it to their view if they want to see it that way. But that's what that available as list view means. Over here, we have available as a dashboard view. That's if you want to add it to in a portlet in your dashboard to have just a view of this saved search. And remember that limitation was you can only have 7 columns that'll show. The sublist view is showing it as a sublist inside of a record. If I'm looking at a record and I'm in a sub tab and it's a sublist down there. Available for reminders is I use that all the time because then I can put it on my dashboard reminder to tell me, hey, this saved search has these results. These are things you need to take care of. It's kind of like creating a to-do list for yourself. And then that earlier, what I talked about, the show in menu, is where it'll show when I go to look at my reports, saved search, all saved searches, it's going to show right here if you check the box. So if this is an important one for your entire company, you can show it in the menu, make it public, and then everybody can find it. So those are the kind of the header options there. There's also, let's see, yep, okay, we went through that. And then you really get into the meat of your saved search, which is the criteria. I think of, that's more like reaching into the database and saying, what data do I care about for this saved search? What do I want to look at? And so this is I'm not going to say trickiest part of it, but it's the critical part. You don't want to pull too much data because then your search will take longer to render, but also you want to have all of the data that you need to come in. So if I were to leave this blank and run it, it would take a long time because I haven't even said what I'm looking for. It's going to go look at the entire transaction set. And so here, I usually start with type because I say, what types of transactions do I want to look for? So that's going to be my first filter. And this is where you could say, okay, I'm going to look at, let's go ahead and I'm going to do credit memos and invoices for a customer. And so I didn't use my control key because I'm on my laptop. Let me do that better. Okay, so I'm looking only at invoices and credit memos. And this doesn't really apply, but I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to say posting. If you're ever trying to compare GL data with this data, you'll want to say posting yes. Now, these, I guess you could have an invoice that's not approved, which means it's not posting yet, and it wouldn't show on your income statement. So if I'm trying to compare to an income statement, I'm going to say posting true, and that'll ignore all of the ones out there. For example, memorized transactions are not posting, but I don't have to go in and say memorized, yes, no. If I just say posting, I'm going to capture all of that. And if you say posting yes, it's not going to pull things like a purchase order or a sales order. And I think those are important distinctions when you're doing your criteria. You can also, mainline is a really important criteria, because if I say mainline yes, I'm only going to get the header of the transaction. I'm not going to get the children. But if I don't indicate mainline or non-mainline, I'm going to get all of it. And if I do a running total on that my results, it's going to double it because it's going to show the item level data and the header level data, and you're going to see a duplication there. So what I'm going to do now, just to show you how that works, I'm going to say either, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what it looks like. All right. And then we'll change it in a minute. But you can do things like there's a few other special values for criteria, like tax line, shipping line. Maybe you don't want to include if you're looking at the details, you might not want to see the taxes or the shipping, and you can remove those by just saying tax line, no, and shipping. So see when it has that line, these are just kind of unique features of the criteria where you can say, I really don't want to see that. And then, oh yeah, it jumped to the next row. Sometimes it does that to me, and so it already took that in. And then you can also come in here and say, for example, well, I'm going to do created by, because that's one that's, actually, I'm going to do it in the results. Here, I might say system notes fields, and let's say I want to do, I'm just showing you this. You can also say date created as a field, but I'm going to say I want to know when I'm filtering my system notes here, I only want to pull the creation of it, not any other system note. So I'm limiting, I just wanted to show you a join here, because now I've reached through to another record to filter on that other record. And so that's your join, is going to the bottom of the list. You can see all of these with the dots after them are joined records, and you can pull them in your results, but you can also pull them in your filter, which is pretty powerful. All right. Okay, I'm going to leave that for now. I think, actually, I'm going to put a date filter on here too. I'm going to say, let's say the last rolling year. Okay, so that we don't see everything. Oh, and use expressions is a really important thing that I need to add here. So you can add parentheses to say for example, if the credit memo is over $100, I want to see it, but if the invoice is over 500, I want to see it. And then, so you can do, and you can do, I'm going to do all of this in one. So this is all that, one selection, and this is just Boolean logic here. We'll say ands for all of these. And then I might say, or, I'm trying to, what other would we want to see? Maybe a type is, trying to think, another customer deposit. We'll do that one. Okay, so this might not make sense, but so this is where you can set up some pretty, using expressions, you can do quite a bit to say this or this, and this or this, and get pretty detailed in your selection. Oh, shoot, I forgot one more. As I look at my power, you can also do summary. Now on this one, I'm not going to do it on this one. It's a little more detailed, but this is where if you want to filter on the summary data, so you could do a case when and say something like, I want to sum the how many times or sum the total amount that we've sold them, and I only want to see them if they're over $1 million, a customer over $1 million. And so you can't do that on the results tab because that's looking at one transaction at a time. But on the summary tab, you could say, only show me those customers or transactions related to customers where their sum total is over $1 million. And I'm looking at my time and I realize I've got to speed up. So let's do our next CPE question. And while we're doing that, I'll fill this in.
Okay, CPE question number 2 is launched. The question is, for running a save search over a record and a joined sum record, one should about 30 seconds left for the CPE question. You have a few more seconds for the CPE question. Going once, going twice. And I'm ending the poll. Share the results.
And it was B. We are not able to select 2 records. When you start the save search, it's only 1 record that you pick, and then you have to reach through it into the joined record during your selection of criteria and results.
Okay.
Okay. We'll jump to the results tab. So this tab, like I said, the criteria tab is all about throwing the net into the data and pulling the data out that you want. Now the results tab is how do you want to display that data once it comes out, and what do you want it to look like? And so you've got a sort order, and so I'm going to say sort by customer, and actually we're going to go down to the customer. Wait, I'll put it on here first. I'm going to come up here. That one was always showing. I'm going to leave that star because that's telling you if it's the main line or not. And I'm going to just pull a few of these off You can hit remove. You can say remove all if you don't like them. I never really look at tax period. I want the document number, name, account, memo, amount, and then I'm going to get rid of these are custom fields. And when they get added, they throw them out here to be added on, and it's sometimes annoying. I think there's something you can do when you add them to not put them there, but that gets missed often. All right, so I'm going to come back up here and say, let's do date first, just to put one in. And then here's where you can show totals. I'm going to do that. And you can have multiple layers on your results sort. And I just want to run this to show you what the main line versus detailed lines. Oh, look at that. We don't have any invoices in here. It's test data. I'll take the date search off. But what you see here is this is a customer deposit. Move this goofy thing. And so this is the main line of the deposit, and this is the detailed line of the deposit. And you can see that the totaled up both sides. And let's say I wanted to know my total for customer deposits. I don't want to pull both of them then. I only want the header or the detail. And in this case, I'm just going to do header information. So let me make a quick edit here and take off. I'm going to take off the date field. And I'm going to also say mainline true, so that we just get one per. Let's see what we get when we do that. Nothing. What did I do wrong? Hold on. I did and you can't have something that's an invoice and a credit memo and a customer deposit. So of course that's going to show me nothing. And we don't have. So my bad on the test data in this account. I apologize. It's only, and that's not even showing us the main line. 1 second. I'm going to remove that one out too. Take off the expressions. So welcome to Safe Searches. It's like always a trial and error. There we go. Now we're getting some. And so you can see that it's got the little star saying this is the main line. We're getting all of our invoices. It's probably not a lot of credit memos out there for all of these customers. So what we could also do now in the results, let's say we wanted to know what state they were in so that we could show our sales by area. We would have to reach into the customer record and pull it from there. And actually, this might be an example of, yeah, there's the address. So I'm going to say state, province, add. And we're going to say save and run. And so now we see our states out there. But then someone says, well, can you total that up for me? Now we're going to come back here, and in the results field, we start using the summaries. And this is really powerful because we can summarize it by state. I'm going to group it by state, and I'm going to total it by amount. Huh, there it is. Sum. And if I don't put anything else on this, I'm going to see it. Those are the only two columns I'm going to see. And remember, this was for all time. Oh, I did a count. Man, What's wrong with me? I thought I did amount and I did account. We need to group it by this and sum by amount. There we go. So now you see, okay, these are our totals. And so this would give you, okay, these are our sales for these states. Now what you can also do is add a filter, because it might not be helpful. So we might put a date filter in here so that whenever we run this, we can indicate. So you'll notice I didn't put the filter for the date this time in the criteria. I put it up here. And this makes it much more flexible. If you're sharing this saved search with people, you can put the filter on the face of the saved search instead of buried in the criteria of the saved search. So then they can run it for whatever they want. So I might say, I'm going to just say, actually, I don't want to filter it because I don't know what date they have in here. But we could do other filters on here too, based on something on the customer record, maybe channel, or however we'd want, however you want to filter your data, you could add it there. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes to see. Oh, one thing that I don't use very often is this function, but it is pretty powerful because you can age things. You can put an absolute value if you want to do it that way. You can say that the calendar week. I've done this with a formula before, and I didn't realize that the function would do that for me. And so it can be really powerful. You can negate it. Let's say you're pulling something and it's showing you as a negative and you want a positive, number as time. You can go crazy, round, things like that. So that can be really powerful. Let's see. And I'm not going through all of these because in the rest of the presentation, we'll be looking at some of the other ones. I'll point out a couple things in the audience here, that this is where you can say specifically who you want to give it to and if they can edit it. And so you can be more specific about who to give it to. You can also say for the roles, if it's a list view, you could make it as a preferred list view. And I said that wrong earlier, I apologize. You could make a list view and then say, I want this to be the preferred list view for these roles, or the preferred search form results dashboard view. So you can get pretty granular in how you assign these. I can't remember if later folks are going through the emailing of them.
I think Kelly is planning on it.
Okay,
Dana.
great. Okay, thanks. I meant to write that down, who is doing what, but and I know she's going through the results, formatting the results, so we won't go into that. But all right, we have another CPE question.
Okay, CPE question number 3 is launched. Which is true for the criteria tab of the Save Search Builder? Getting a mixed response here on this one.
Yeah. I think I forgot to say one thing. I forgot to give the answer to this one.
About 15 seconds left to answer CPE question number 3. CPE question, 5 seconds, going once, going twice. And we're going to end it. I'll share the results.
It was B, and I didn't say that when I talked about using expressions. When you use expressions on the criteria, you have to be careful because it will give you an error if you try to use that same field or as your available filter. So it's just one of those weird things that you bump into when you're working on it. All right. I'm going to bring this back over. In the slide deck, you'll find some links to, do they work on the PDF now that I'm clicking on it? Nope. I'll put a different slide out for that. There's some links. If you look at Suite ID, the Suite Answers ID number 8485, there's links to some Save Search samples. And I got this from Jamie's presentation, Corey, a long time ago. She did one way back. And it's nice because you can start with one that they've already got and then edit it from there, which is a great way to create new save searches, is start with one that's close, do a save as, and then start trying things. The beauty of save searches is you're not editing any data, so you can test all you want and you're not going to hurt anything. Okay, and that is what I have on just the intro part, and we're going to move on, and I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you so much, Dana. And so at this point, we'll turn it over to Kelly. So Kelly, if you want to get loaded up here.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, can you guys see my screen okay?
Yep, looks good.
All right, perfect. So yeah, Corey's gonna hop in every once in a while for CPE questions, I believe. And I believe we'll be breaking in 15 minutes. Corey, is that correct?
So yeah, I will interrupt with the CPE questions for your section and Mike's section, I think. And then we'll break in probably 20 minutes or so. 15.
Okay, perfect. All right, so my name is Kelly Williams, and I'm a senior consultant at Stratos ERP Partners. I've been working with NetSuite as an admin and a consultant for over 6 years, and so I've got quite a bit of experience with safe searches for reporting and integration uses. If you have any questions at all when I'm presenting, feel free to throw them in the chat, and hopefully some users can jump in and help, and I'll be looking at those after I'm done presenting. And so basically in this section, I'm gonna review how to further customize your searches and unlock more insights into your data with the use of summarizing, formulas, and formatting. So this agenda kind of outlines the main topics we'll cover in this section about safe searches. We'll start by exploring formulas used in safe searches, including common use cases and data formatting techniques. Next, we'll discuss how to summarize results effectively using different summary types that Dana reviewed a little bit. Some of those include group, count, sum, minimum, maximum, and average. We'll review how to apply both basic and conditional HTML formatting to search results. And this presentation will also cover the highlighting features and a little bit more about available filters to enhance your data visibility. We'll also address controlling search access through public and private settings, audience definitions, and role-based permissions. Finally, we'll conclude with best practices to optimize safe searches for better performance and usability. Okay, so formulas in safe searches. The purpose of formulas is to allow users to create custom calculations and manipulate data to meet specific reporting needs beyond NetSuite standard capabilities. Common use cases, formulas can be used to calculate commissions, derive conditional statuses, concatenate fields, format dates, numbers, and text. I've often used formulas to manipulate data into a certain format to support a NetSuite integration to an external system to support their requirements. I've also used it for users when they're downloading a safe search as a CSV and importing it into another external system, and you can use formulas to manipulate the data within NetSuite without requiring any additional manipulations within Excel. Data formatting, so formulas support a variety of outputs such as currency, percentages, dates, and text. So we'll look in the dropdown of the search here in NetSuite in a moment, and you'll see that formula is the field option, and then in parentheses is your output type. And so we'll be jumping into NetSuite in a moment, and I'll show you what that looks like. And then case one logic. Case one logic lets you transform, categorize, and flag data dynamically without changing the underlying criteria when used in the results of a safe search. So conditional logic enables you to categorize the data, apply different calculations, or highlight results based on your specific criteria. Here are some examples that you could use in a NetSuite safe search. So it can be used for calculating discounts. So you could do something like case when amount is greater than 1,000. There's a little bit of a typo here. Then amount minus amount times 0.1 would get you the 10% off any amount greater than 1,000. In this case, you're going to get the 10% of any amounts over 1,000 in this formula. And then for conditional text, you can use something like case when status is open, then pending else closed to show a human readable status, or just a status that differs from, what the NetSuite native status fields are. You can use formulas for date calculations. So you can use something like to_date tran date plus 7 to add 7 days to the transaction date. And another common one I use is concatenation. So in this example, you're taking the customer ID and the customer name and combining them with a dash in between to show them in one column. So this example illustrates, or these examples illustrates how formulas can manipulate data dynamically within safe searches to fit your specific business need. So now I'm going to pop into NetSuite. Can you guys see my NetSuite okay?
Yes.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for confirming. Okay, great. So we're looking at a pre-built transaction search here for purchase orders created this month. So I've just got some basic criteria here for the type, the date, and mainline. You can use formulas within the criteria of a safe search, but for this example, I'm just going to show them in the results. So going back to those formula outputs I was talking about earlier, you can type in formula. My view might look a little bit differently just because I've got some Google Chrome extensions. But these are the different formulas and their output types in parentheses. If you're following along in your NetSuite, or if you don't recognize the formula HTML option, you may need to enable another feature in your account. So if you go to Setup, Company, Enable Features as an administrator, I've got it open here in another tab, and you go to the Analytics section, scroll down to Save Search, check HTML formulas and search. I think you'll be prompted to accept the terms of service and click Save. You will then see formula HTML as an option in the dropdown here. We're going to go over HTML formulas a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so walking through some standard formulas, here we've got the formula date example I had in the slide. So in this, fake business case example, let's just say that your expected arrival date of your PO is always 7 days after the PO is entered. And so you could have that sourced in a formula within a safe search. And then I've just got status here and then my manipulated status. So I'm basically saying if it's pending receipt, I want to see open. And when it's fully billed, I want to see closed. So that's just what I want for my specific business needs, or that's what my users understand better. And then I've got document number here, and then a concatenation of the document number and the vendor name. I've used this for not this specific concatenation, but just concatenation in general when manipulating data using saved searches for an integration. So that one can definitely come in handy. Another one I've used for integrations is maybe removing some certain special characters. So in this case, I know some of my vendor names have a comma or a decimal point in it, and I need to remove those values from my vendor name and just keep the name. And so that's what this formula is doing here. And then lastly, my discount example for amount. Basically, I know I have this vendor with an internal ID of 1264 that always gives us a 10% discount. And so I just want to see for that specific vendor a 10% discount. Otherwise, I want to see the PO amount. So I'm going to go ahead and run this search so we can see what the results look like. So I highly recommend always checking to make sure that your formulas are working as expected and validating that it is correct. So in this case, my formula should be showing me 7 days past my original date. So that looks good to me. I've got my fully billed as closed, and then just to check the other side of that with my pending receipt status, I'm gonna click status here so I can sort my save search by pending receipt, and I can see that these say open, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. And then we've got the document number, the concatenation of the document number dash the vendor name. We've got the vendor name and then the vendor name without the comma and decimal point. So Aloha Inc.'s a perfect example here where I just wanted to remove those special characters. And then lastly, I've got my specific discount for Peakscare LLC. That internal ID was for this vendor. So I'm seeing 10% off here on the amount, but otherwise I'm seeing the exact totals for any other vendor for the PO. All right. Actually, one more thing. I just want to show you what this what it looks like if you get an error in your formula. So if you have a syntax issue, so in this case, I'm just going to misspell end, you can see that you'll get an error invalid expression. And so that typically indicates that you've misspelled something or there's something wrong with your code. Corey, how are we at on time?
I think we're good. Let's go ahead and pause for a CPE question. So I'll
Okay.
go ahead and launch question number 4. The question is, what is the primary purpose of using formulas in NetSuite Safe Searches? So we'll leave that open for about a minute or so. Looks like this is almost unanimous. We'll leave this open for another 20 seconds or so. CPE question number 4. And I was thinking, Kelly, if you could, during the break, maybe take those formulas and post them in the chat window in case anybody wants to copy those over and play with them in their own system. That might be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. I'll have more formulas to post to at the end of the call.
Great. Okay, I'm going to end the poll for the CPE question, and I'll share the results. And which is the correct answer, Kelly?
I'm guessing B.
It is. Yeah, it is B. B is the correct answer here. Okay, thanks everybody. All right, we'll stop sharing. And Kelly, you can keep going, and then we'll pause in another 7 minutes or so for a break.
Okay, perfect. Sounds good. Okay, going back to my slides. Oops. Here we go. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit more about summarizing results with Safe Searches. So I'm going to discuss the 6 different types, which are group, count, sum, minimum, maximum, and average. So group allows you to group data by specified fields, allowing you to categorize records, such as grouping sales by region or product type. Count counts the number of records in each group or overall, useful for measuring frequency or volume, like counting total orders. Sum calculates the total sum of a numeric field within groups or the entire search. It's good for summing, total amount, total revenue. Minimum will find the smallest value in a numeric field across the data set or within groups, such as the lowest price in product listings. Maximum is the exact opposite of that. It's going to find the highest value, which could be the maximum invoice amount or highest transaction value. An average is going to compute the mean value of a numeric field, providing insights like average order size or average customer spend. So going back into NetSuite, I have got a summarized example. So in this example, I'm looking at another transaction search, but I'm looking at bills by vendor. And so in the results, you can see that I'm grouping by the vendor name. I'm counting the number of bills per vendor, and I know it's only bills because in my criteria, I'm filtering by the type is bill. I'm summing the total amount, and then I'm also getting the smallest amount billed, largest billed amount, and average amount billed. So let's take a look at what that looks like. And you can see here on the left, we've got our vendor name, the number of bills. If it's only one bill, the amount across the board is going to be the same. But if you scroll down, you can see that we've got a total amount billed, smallest, largest, and average. And the numbers are much more variable when you have more data. Okay. Okay. Going into HTML formatting of results, you can use tags to emphasize text, to bold or italicize your data. You can apply simple styling such as font color and size. You can format lists and line breaks. And basically, this is just going to enhance the clarity and visual appeal of your search results. You can also use the case when logic we talked about earlier with HTML to apply formatting based on data values. So this could be used to highlight key data dynamically based on specific conditions. For example, you can change the text color if that value exceeds a certain threshold. And this also just overall improves your data interpretation with visual cues in the results outside of the standard highlighting functionality that we're going to get into that NetSuite offers. All right. So in this example, we're looking at a transaction search for sales orders created this month, and specifically looking at sales orders using this custom form. And in the results, you can see that I've got some different HTML formulas. So using these tags, I am bolding the document number. The customer will be in italics. And in this formula, if the amount is less than 25, I'm going to bold and make that amount red. And I'm applying some additional amount formatting. And then lastly, this one's my favorite HTML formula to use. In NetSuite, you'll have related PDF transactions for sales orders, purchase orders, bunch of different transaction types. And that PDF will have a URL, and you can link it dynamically in a saved search by using that URL and concatenating the internal ID. I also have this target blank here that will basically open it up in a new tab. And you can choose to display this link any way you like. In this case, I'm showing print and then the transaction ID number. So let's go ahead and take a look at what these formulas look like in action. So you can see that the document number is bolded. We've got the formatting of our customer name here, and we've got our amount. And if it is less than 25, we are getting that result shown in bold and red. And then lastly, we've got our sales order PDF to print. So if I click on that, you can see that it opened up in a new tab. Just give it a minute to load. And you can see that it's for SO 3779. If I were to click on 7430, opens in a new tab, and I'm getting SO 7430. So I really like that one. It's fun for me. All right, Corey,
sorry,
how are we
Kelly,
doing?
could you just explain a little more, some more details on those formulas of like that, the structure and the requirements on the structure on those? Like the apostrophes and the concatenation and how you close an HTML tag.
Yeah, basically, like I was explaining before, you need to concatenate the internal ID into the formula of the URL in order to get that unique sales order PDF for that example specifically. And you can see the formatting here for the HTML for the bold and the italicized formulas. Is there anything you wanted to add, Corey?
No, I guess I'm also thinking if somebody is not familiar with HTML and how to do those tags, there is some online tools for learning what those are. HTML, like there's an HTML viewer you can test those in online. Because there's various tags that you may not know what they do, but there's a ton of possibilities there. I'll find a good HTML site where you can learn some of that, and I'll post it in the chat window.
Corey, W3 Schools is a favorite of mine.
W3 Schools, yeah. Do you have a link to that, Mike?
No, I'll post it down.
Okay, we'll find it and post that. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, let's go ahead and take a quick break, and we'll take a 10-minute break and come back after that and continue with Kelly's presentation.
All right, thanks, Corey. I've posted the formulas so far in the chat, and I've started adding, what they do as well. If anybody wants to copy those and use them to play around with formulas yourself. Okay, so since I've had everything pre-demoed, I just want to do a brief overview real quick of how to add a formula from the results, because the navigation can be a little bit different for someone who's never tried it. So if you click formula, you'll want to select your output. So in this case, I'm going to click formula text. And then you can click into this formula section right here, and you can type directly, or you can click this little arrow right here to add a formula. I don't often use this function, but there are a lot of great functions up here. I more often use this field sourcing. So in the case of the like concatenation example that I showed before, I would look for document number, and when I click on that, it sources the field ID for me. And then I'm going to add my concatenation with a dash. And I want to add the name or entity. Sometimes it takes a little while to figure out what it's called. So just name here and then click set and then click add. And so that's how you'll add a formula from start to finish within your results. And going back to a little bit more on grouping that I skipped over. I want to show you what it looks like when you ungroup these results versus group the results. So let's just remove all of our summary types. And so in this case, I'm just going to have a lot of different amount fields displaying with the transaction numbers. So you can see that I'm getting each individual transaction number and their amounts without grouping them. And then what the grouping is going to do, I want to count the transaction number. So for generation N, I'm going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in the results of my count. And then I'm going to be able to, sum, min, max, and average the total amount across their bills. And now we're looking back at that grouping view. And here is that generation N. So there was definitely more transactions in there for that vendor. Okay, perfect. Now I'm going to turn it over to Corey for another CPE question.
Okay, sounds good. I'll launch CPE question number 5. The question is, which summary type would you use to calculate total sales revenue in the Save search? About 30 seconds left for the CPE question. And Kelly, there's a question in the chat window. Todd asked if you were able to post what Chrome extensions you use with NetSuite when you get a chance, and maybe not right away, but after your part here, that would be helpful for everybody to know. I know that Save Search add-on is pretty cool.
Yeah, I can definitely do that. I find it very helpful. Great. Yes.
Yeah. Okay, CPE question going once, going twice. Last chance. I will end the poll now, share the results. And the correct answer is C, sum. So that is correct for the majority of everybody. All right, I'll turn it back over to you, Kelly.
All right, great. Thanks, Corey. Okay, so diving in a little bit to the NetSuite native highlighting options as well as available filters. So within a Safe Search, you'll see a subtab for highlighting. And so this basically allows you to apply conditional formatting to search results and match key data point or making key data points stand out based on specific criteria. And so really the only difference with the highlight if and highlight if summary is if you're using those summary types, you'll want to create your highlighting rules under this highlight if summary. So this will extend conditional highlighting to summarize results. And it will enable users to quickly identify groups or totals that meet specific conditions. And then lastly, we've got available filters. I know that Dana went into a little bit earlier, and this basically allows you to narrow results dynamically by applying criteria such as date ranges, statuses, categories, and just improving your search relevance and usability. So I'll go over a couple tips and tricks I have when using filters as well. So let's go back into NetSuite. And I will start with our original formula demo. And this is the highlighting subtab I was referring to. And then you can see there's the highlight if and highlight if summary. So in this case, we are not using any summary types in this Safe Search. And so I've got a condition here that if the amount is greater than 1,000, and then when you set that up, you click set and add set. Okay, you'll have the ability to add a text color and background color. So I'm just going to change this for fun. Let's make this blue and yellow. Click OK, and I'll go ahead and run my search. And so right now we've got some pretty low amounts here. So I'm gonna click amount here to sort lowest to highest. And now we've got all of our high amounts, and you can see that highlighting formatting is showing here in that background color of yellow and the text color of blue. And so I've got a similar example here with the highlight if summary in our summarized demo result, where we are using these summary types, and with the sum of amount is greater than 1,000, you basically have the option to use summary types here in this section. I've got the text color and the background color. I'll make this green, and you can also check this box to show it in bold. And I'm going to go ahead and run these results. And you can see that my highlighting formatting applied to my search results. Another thing that I don't think we went over in detail yet are these icons up here that I just wanted to mention briefly. So if you can see when I hover, I can export as a CSV, export as Excel, PDF, print. So I just wanted to mention that in case didn't know those were there. And then the next subtab over from highlighting is this available filters. So I believe I've got some filters already on this formula demo. And so what you'll want to do is just type in the field name that you're looking for, select it, and show in filter region, and click add. And so it's not letting me add it since I already have this one here up above. And so this, as a reminder, is a transaction search for purchase orders created this month. So in this case, I'm showing the vendor name here twice. This is the vendor name off of the PO, and this is the vendor name using a join to the vendor record. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because sometimes it's a little bit of trial and error on how your filters show up in your Safe Search. So in this case, I've got the drop down looking for the vendor name directly off of the PO. But if I do vendor name ... name, I get a freeform text field that I can type in directly, which maybe your user prefers and is asking for that specifically when you're building out their Save Search. And then lastly, when it comes to filters, I just wanted to mention this default text field filter. So I'm going to set this to is for right now and show you what happens when I try to search by the name and it is not exact. So in this case, I want to look for any POs for Peaks Gear LLC. And if I just type in Peaks Gear and click tab, give it a second to load, I'm going to get nothing because it is not exactly the name of the vendor. So if I type in LLC now, it does show up. I personally don't like that because what if I just want to type in Peaks Gear and not be so exacting? So I'm going to change this to contains. So this is going to look for any values that contain what you type. And this gives you a lot more flexibility to even just type in gear. And you'll get any vendor name with the word gear in it. In this case, the only one in my environment is Peaks Gear LLC. But that just gives me the flexibility to not have to type in the exact name of that vendor record in this case, or that vendor name. I also wanted to highlight the subsidiary option up here. I'll go back to show you what that looks like in the setup. But there was another checkbox I kind of skipped over because I'm showing this subsidiary filter as a multi-select. So I believe this subsidiary only has one transaction with it. But if I click on this, I'm getting no results because I still have this here. But basically, the multi-select allows you to choose more than one subsidiary in this case. So if we go back to available filters, this show as multi-select needs to be checked to give you that view for your filter. Okay. Moving on to controlling access to Save Searches. So we have a public checkbox on our Save Search, and public searches are accessible to all users with the permission to view the Save Searches, while private searches are restricted to the creator or specifically shared users in order to protect sensitive data. The audience settings allow you to configure Save Searches to be visible only to selected audiences, such as departments, teams, individual users, and this basically just enables you to use targeted data sharing and minimize unnecessary exposure to any sensitive data you might have in your NetSuite environment. And then we have role-based access, which allows you to assign access to Save Searches based on the user's roles within NetSuite, allowing even more granular control over who can view, edit, or run searches according to their responsibilities and security level. And then I'm also going to go into some emailing functionality as well. So this is the public checkbox I was referring to in that slide. And if you didn't know, you can click on any field in NetSuite to get this field help to pop up. But just wanted to call out for public searches, if you want your search name to appear in the global search, that public checkbox needs to be selected. If you also want to email your search results, it also needs to be checked as public. And so this will not allow any other user to edit your search, but it will let them do a save as, which basically lets them change the name and make their own copy of your search and modify it for their own needs. So that's kind of a little bit on public versus private saved searches. And then there's this audience subtab that we went over briefly earlier, and this basically just lets you restrict who can view the saved search based on their specific role, their department, their subsidiary, or even restrict it down to specific employees. And this roles also is even more granular and lets you select based on the specific role if it's available as a dashboard view, sublist view, down to the specific role of the user. And then emailing is a big one of safe searches that is used quite often. And basically you can email to specific recipients. If you select their name here, I'm just going to type in my own name and click add. Or you can also do this recipients from results. So if you've got a transaction search with sales reps and sales rep is in the results of the safe search, you can email those results to those specific sales reps, and they will only get the lines of the report that are applicable to them from a single saved search. Going back up to these checkboxes here, if you wanted to send an email based on when the record is added to the saved search, so let's just say anytime a sales order is created, you would check this box, and so you'd get an email every single time a sales order was created in that example. Or you can send emails according to schedule. You can choose to send if no results, or if you don't want to get an email if there's no results, you can uncheck this. The summarized emails basically will just send one email if there's multiple recipients, but if you uncheck this, multiple emails will go out to each of the specified recipients. And we'll get into this schedule here in a minute and how you set that up. But this customized message, you'll want to select your from email, your subject line, and in the from section, if you click on this and you don't remember what I said for the formatting, this is exactly what it needs to look like in the section to work properly. So you'll want to put your name and then the email address that you're sending from in those little carets. I highly recommend as a best practice to either have something in the subject line reflect the name of the safe search, or even better in the introduction, put safe search and then the internal ID of the safe search. So 954. So if a user reaches out to you and is like, hey, can you add so-and-so to this email? Or can you remove me from this email? You can easily associate that email message to the safe search it's associated with. And then lastly, down here on this customized message, you can send it with the results within the message, send a CSV, Microsoft Excel, PDF. I recommend sending a CSV. If you send us a Microsoft Excel, it tends to truncate the results. So send a CSV is your best options if you're looking for an Excel view. Okay, and then the schedule, you can schedule it as a single, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. You can really adjust as you see fit. And you can see that you can even repeat every weekday or weekly. You can select the specific days of the week. It could be an every other week thing if you change it here. And then it's just important to start the series start date, what time it's going to be scheduled at, and if there's a specific end date. If not, no end date is checked by default. If you do want to test what your email looks like, I recommend entering in your own name and clicking save and email. And that way you can get the results directly immediately, and you can see what that email will look like before you schedule it to other users. All right. Lastly, I'm just going to go into some best practices that I might not have covered yet. So it's really important to clearly define your search's purpose. You'll want to, I recommend even restricting down to one result, especially if you're, pulling in the amount field and you're working in a multi-currency environment, just to make sure you're pulling the correct amounts. And so when you're restricted down to one transaction, you can click into that transaction and see that your data is pulling as expected, especially with mainline and you could be getting, multiple lines and duplicating your amounts without realizing it. I recommend using your formulas and summary types judiciously and regularly reviewing and updating your searches to reflect business changes. So, in an example, if you have a new B2B form that your customer or you're using within your NetSuite environment and you have existing saved searches that are restricting, your wholesale data to a specific form, making sure you add that new form to those existing searches as your business evolves and changes to make sure you're not missing any data in those existing reports. I recommend applying proper naming conventions to your search names and documentation. So if you're creating a saved search for sales orders created this year, make sure that the name properly reflects it and to mitigate any confusion. This also applies when emailing saved searches, like I covered briefly earlier. I also recommend controlling access by setting appropriate audience and role restrictions when dealing with sensitive data. And lastly, it's always great to leverage the highlighting, filters, and HTML formatting to enhance result usability and user experience. All right, that is all that I have for today. I'm going to turn it back over to Corey, and thank you for taking the time to listen to me.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Great job. All right, I'm going to post another CPE question to finish off Kelly's section. And the question is, which settings allow you to limit saved search visibility to specific departments, teams, or users? I'll leave this CPE question up for about another minute or so. Okay, about 10 seconds left. CPE question number 6. Yeah, and Colleen said, does anybody else wish there was a field on save searches for a description so we could record the intent of that save search? I think that's a great idea. So, and Roy said there's a sweet idea that you can upvote. So maybe they'll add a description field to save searches sometime in the future, but that would be great. All right, I'm going to end the poll question here and share the results. The answer to this is C, audience settings. That's how you limit the save search visibility. All right, so at this point, we'll turn it over to Mike Cackline to finish us out today.
All right, thanks, Corey. All right, let me do a share. Make sure I get the right screen.
And Mike, your audio is a little soft. I don't know if there's a way to improve that, but it's a little quiet, I should say.
All right, hang on. Let me see if I can find that setting. I can't find that setting right off the bat. Oh, hang on. Is this it? Are you able to hear me at all, or is it just a little bit
Yeah,
quiet?
I can hear you. I can hear you, and it's clear. It's just kind of quiet.
It's just quiet. Okay. I'm not seeing it right off the bat, which is no bueno. Oh, hang on. Audio settings. Microphone. Input volume is not selectable. Hang on. Adjust. All right, is this better?
It's about the same.
It's about the same.
If you just speak up a little, it'll probably be fine.
Okay. All right, we will do it. All right, do y'all see my screen?
Yeah, looks.
Okay. All right, let's get started. Welcome everybody. So it's my part of the presentation on searches. We're also going to cover analytics and SuiteQL. So this will probably be really enlightening for some of you and refreshing for some of you. All right, let's get started. Okay, so high-level topics. We're going to start off with some like battle lessons learned with searches, and then we'll move on to analytics, and then we're going to touch on SuiteQL and SuiteAnalytics just so you know what they are, but we're not going to go into very much detail on those. And this little table here, I just kind of threw together of like, my kind of opinion on if you're talking, if you're getting data out of NetSuite, it's one of these three ways, and like good, better, best on difficulty and capabilities. All right. And Corey, you can still hear me fine?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. All right. These are my kind of battle lessons learned. So I'll do a little bit of a screen share, but walk with me through, just kind of hopefully I can resonate with some of y'all. These are things I've just learned that are really helpful. So the first thing, when you're in NetSuite and you want to pull up a search, do a global search of search::blah, where blah is the name of your search. This is especially helpful with public searches, and if I remember right, your private, your own private searches show up here. If you just global search the name of the search, NetSuite's like looking across everything, like every sales order, every invoice, every. But if you say search::blah, it knows you're looking for searches. The second tip I've learned, which is really helpful, is go ahead and create ahead of time. Do this on like, those Friday afternoons where really you're just kind of done and you don't want to do anything that involves any thought. Go create yourself a search called recent invoices, and then another one called recent vendor bills, and another one called recent journals, and another one called recent, whatever, credit memos. You will be astounded how often you will go back to these searches. And a recent search that I've created, I'll show you one in a minute here, basically is every invoice, the most recent on top, the least recent on the bottom, and just clip it to like every invoice that was created in the past year. Some time frame that you normally deal in. These searches I use them all the time. So I would encourage you to do similar. Another, and I'll show again example of this that people who know me, I'm probably famous for these. I call them zero reports. So what you do with a zero report is a saved search that is intended to capture those things that when you're in a meeting and somebody says, "Oh, that should never happen," like a sales order with a negative quantity on it. That should never happen. Well, it does. So a zero report is a saved search. I'll show you one that I've got here that looks for a very specific, this should never happen. And if it happens, it emails you about it. These are also incredibly valuable for those of y'all who are also in an audit environment. So, you are audited every year or quarter. And then another note, Kelly kind of made a note on this too. I call them friends searches. So these are where, you have a problem. I don't know, again, back to a sales order with a negative line. Like, oh no, we've got the sales order with a negative line. How did this happen? And you go and you figure all that out. And at some point, you're going to have this question, is this the only one or are there others? Or would I ask myself, are there friends? Are there other searches or are there other transactions like this? So there's a technique I used with zero reports that Kelly kind of noted on is go create a search for just that one sales order you know about and make the results always return the one sales order you know about. Specifically, you put an internal ID filter and then just remove that filter, and that's your friend search. That basically says, is there anything else that looks like this? Another one is, I'm sorry I'm talking verbally, but hopefully this is resonating with some of y'all. When you make a saved search, the last column just always do a date created column where the formula is sysdate. I think I'll be able to show that here in a minute. Why? Because the people who use your search will export to CSV, or you'll export to CSV, and 2.5 weeks later, when it comes up in that meeting with your CFO or whatever, they're going to ask, well, when did you pull this data, or how recent is this? Or if you're slicing it up with other stuff in Excel, that date created column will tell you like when that data came as of. Oh, I'm sorry, I was talking about report date as last column. The date created is first is just something I like to use as a search. I always like the most recent on top. Let me go to actually a actual search, and I'm going to show you a couple things on one. So if you do the search :recent, again, these like recent kind of searches, really good best practice I found. This one in particular is interesting. This one returns nothing. Why? Because it's a zero report. This one in particular, I highlight a couple things, is that we are doing a search where the date is on or after yesterday. So with zero reports, it's very important to tightly bound how often the search is going to report this data. Because if you report it over time, it's just forever time, it becomes noise and people ignore it. So with a zero report, I'd highly recommend like a 3-day window. You know, you think about long weekend kind of things, and no longer. So this is a zero report. This one in particular is useful for us with audit. Like if anybody's changing a location, you know, the location GL subledger thing, that's a GL change and we probably want to know about it. So in this case, did anybody make any change, you know, within the past day, basically? If so, Kelly noted on this, you do the scheduled email thing and you send an email and you basically say, hey, one of these things has changed. And to Kelly's point, somewhere in there put which search it is, otherwise people will never know. And then important to not check this box, send if no results, because if you send a zero report with no results, it's going to send every day and people will ignore it. And the idea of a zero report is that you never get this email. So if you do, you really need to stop and think about it. The other best practice is in the introduction, you tell people why they're getting this email and what they should do about it. And in this zero report, I just run daily. I'm going to go back to the slide. Okay, so we talked about zero reports. Friend searches I covered a little bit recently, but that's where like you're troubleshooting something and then you create a search. Just create a search for that one thing you know about and then start like zooming out. Like, are there any other invoices or sales orders that look this with the same properties? Another thing I want you all to think about when you're creating searches is VLOOKUP columns. So chances are really, really good with searches that you're going to export it to CSV and you're going to drop it in Excel and you or somebody who you work with is going to use it to go VLOOKUP on something else. Because as we all know, searches have this, it only joins one level deep. So please consider in your search results adding columns with unique identifiers to other things. So typically like an internal ID or a transaction document number or a customer ID. The other note is color highlighting. I know we covered a lot on color highlighting, but please again be aware that when you export to CSV, all that color is gone. So something that I like to do every now and then is I'll make a column that I call a is column. So like if I've decided formula, be a sum formula, the exact same formula you use for color highlighting, by the way, I'll add a column with that formula and it'll be a formula numeric and the value is 0 or 1. So like, is overdue might be a column, 0 or 1. You would be amazed how valuable that is in Excel, right? Because in Excel, if you have this column with a 0 or 1, you can then like run pivots and things on it to say like, well, how many are overdue? You don't have to do all the Excel math to figure out if it's overdue. You just add up the numbers. Turns out, I think, and we'll talk about in AI, but I think that is column might be incredibly helpful for AI in the future too. So that was in this color highlighting. So if you're doing color highlighting, consider also having a is something column with a 0 or 1. Amount versus amount currency. So if you're in a multi-currency environment and you have a transaction search and you return amount, I don't remember the details. Somebody can put it in the chat here, but I've run into issues where if you have amount versus amount currency, sometimes it gives you the amount in CAD, but you actually want it in USD or vice versa. So just be aware of those two if you're in multi-currency. I typically use amount currency in my searches. Transaction system node search. I want to cover this for any of you who are audited like we are. You have auditors. System nodes are immutable, which means nobody can change them. Admins can't change them. They are what they are. These system node searches are wonderful when you're dealing with auditors because they're watertight. So consider that if you're in an audit environment. And then the final note that I really like to do when I create saved searches is just think about who's using your search. I always do this when I make mine, especially in the columns that you put in the search. Like, what are they going to do with this? Are they going to drop in Excel and go VLOOKUP? Why are they asking these questions? Do I need to also add a revenue element field, even though I'm searching revenue arrangements? Kind of think through your audience and why they're using the search and use that as a guideline for the columns that you put in your search. All right, so those are Mike's kind of paddle-tested lessons learned. Hopefully y'all picked up a little tidbit in there. Go on to the next slide. All right, another one's a couple more here. So the date created is first to last, report date is last. So this is what that report date as the last column would highly recommend doing this on pretty much all of your searches. VLOOKUP we talked about, highlight, I didn't realize I had the duplicates here, and amount versus amount currency. Okay. Okay, searching journals. Let's talk about this, y'all. Every one of you have probably run into this. Every one of you. You're going to do a transaction search, and you're going to do type equal journal, and you're going to do mainline true, just like you've learned in our talks for the past like million years here at Netsuite User Group. And then you run the search, and you get a million lines, and one journal shows up 16 times, and you're like, why? I did a mainline true, and the journal comes up 16 times. And then you whack your head and it's like, oh, it's because there's 16 lines on the journal. Mainline true has failed me. Yes, when you're searching journals, mainline true will fail you. This is the trick. If you do a filter of line equals 0, you will get 1 line per journal, which is great. And it's also very fast. The problem is you can't figure out the dollar amount of journals. This is the next problem you have with journals, is what's the amount of a journal? Well, with every journal, by definition, the sum of the debits equal the sum of the credits. So the amount of any journal is going to be 0. So if you want the amount of a journal, what you have to do, you can't do line equals 0. You have to do group by, group by like the internal ID or document number. And then you have to sum either the amount debit or the amount credit. And that gives you the amount of the journal. That is slower. Anytime you do group by, it's slower, but you can get the amount. So heads up, searching journals is totally different in NetSuite. These are the tricks. It took me forever to learn the line equals 0 trick. Merry Christmas. I hope you take it and prosper. The other search with journal search is really valuable. If any of y'all have, somebody in this audience has one of these searches where you go in your criteria and it says account any of, and you got like, I don't know, 16 different accounts in your AR, and then like, 4 different accounts in your revenue or what. Just instead, what you do is you say account type. So you filter on account type. So you say account type any of accounts receivable. That will be every single GL account of type accounts receivable. So this is incredibly helpful for journals, honestly, but also for any transaction search. All right. Here's another one. This one is, so Kelly touched on replace. Kelly, I've been in that same space of migrations. For us, it was an Oracle migration. This is just one of those, like, take a screenshot, remember this, forget it until you remember it. And it's super cryptic, but let AI help you. NetSuite has a magic function called regex substir that basically, it looks really cryptic, but it basically says, hey, I've got a memo and it's always formatted the same way. And I just want to pull this one number out and put it in its own column. You'll see in the screenshot right here, it kind of spells it out. You can do that with this regex substir. Regex stands for regular expression. It's a dev techie thing that, most devs even, it's kind of hard for devs too, but you kind of get a gist for it. In today's new world of AI, you just have AI make it for you, like you don't think about it. So just be aware this function exists. It's incredibly helpful for exactly what you see on the screen. You take a memo that's formatted some way, and you just conceptually say, give me this number and put it in a column called this. Very helpful. Okay, here's another one. Exporting large search results. Again, for those of y'all who are in an audit environment, you will be asked every single quarter to give every single debit and every single credit that hits your GL. And I suspect one or two of you have done this because I did it, I think, early in my career, where you're like, oh my God, I got to go make this search and I got to filter period by period for 6 periods, because if I do a whole year, it times out. All I want to do is make a search across the 6 periods and run it and export that to CSV. Please and thank you. Here's the trick. So you create your search and you just get, in your filter, you're like full fiscal year or whatever you want to do in your search. And if you run that search or you save and run that search, it's going to time out. Okay, well, now what? Well, here's what you do. You go to page:/save searches, and that's that top screenshot there. You go find your search, and there's that little column called persist results CSV. You click that link, and then you go and do whatever you want. Like just have a coffee, heck, just like let it run overnight, whatever. It'll take a while to run. And then you go to page:/search results, and you will see it shows up kind of in the search results down there at the bottom. It shows up, and there's a little link labeled downloads. And for proof of the pudding, this is one of our audit polls I did recently. This thing's what, 1 gigabyte of CSV data. So yes, it will make a gigantic file and it will complete. So this is the trick you need to do if you need to run a save search and export it to CSV and not have it time out. This is how to do that. Okay, moving on. All right, so now we're going to talk about, I'm going to reset a little bit. We just talked about save searches, so I'm kind of going to wrap that up. I want to introduce y'all to some other pieces of NetSuite that we haven't talked about. And in this particular case, we're going to talk about analytics. So analytics is it's a free feature. You don't have to pay for it. You do have to set it up, though. I noticed in Setup, Enable Features, Analytics, it's there. If you have any, chances are it's enabled in your system. You'll see in the screenshot here, it's right in your menu bar, and it's called Analytics. If you've never used this, you should use this. And another kind of piece of advice, if you have like a new employee, like they've never used NetSuite before, right? And you need them to get information out of NetSuite. Honestly, I would advise them learning analytics first because it's easier to learn. Searches are a little bit unintuitive, but once you know it, then you know it. But analytics are a little more intuitive. So I'll kind of walk you through that here in a minute. So we're going to talk just kind of high level about analytics. So analytics is divided into data sets and workbooks. So we're going to cover those 2 things. Okay, so in analytics, you have what are called data sets. Think of data sets as a saved search. If you think of a data set as a saved search, you're well on your way. This is a screenshot of what a data set looks like. So a couple things right off the bat. First is the UI is really intuitive. Like on the left-hand side, you have these like click downs. It's a little bit like making searches, but I mean reports, but way more intuitive. Where you have these fields like the 3WM override key thing you see there. You could just click that and drag it over to the right-hand side and bloop, gets a column now. Or you can click and drag it up in the top where it says the green that says criteria summary and bloop, now it's a criteria. Like, you know, it's that easy. You can also, up there at the top where it says search by name or ID, you could search document number and then it'll show you that field. And then you can click and drag it. So this is really straightforward as far as how to, you know, create some of these searches. Or so I say data sets. So the other thing that's really valuable with data sets, like really valuable, is multi-level join. So for instance, if you do a transaction data set, you can go from transaction to its customer, and then from the customer to its, I don't know, you have some custom record on it, or if somebody can think of a good idea, but you can just keep joining. Like in the world of revenue, you could go from the revenue arrangement to the revenue element to the revenue plan to the journal, like that kind of a chain of thought. You can do in one data set just by clicking those little chevron signs to break them down. So I gotta say, like, again, if you have a new employee, if you're struggling with searches or you just like, you find searches to be so 1990s, or you have a new employee who just, they're smart, but they're just, you know, you're like, oh God, I gotta train you how to do searches. And like point them at analytics first because they're pretty straightforward. All right, let me find my cursor here. All right, so there's data sets are like searches, right? So they're these like next level, next generation of searching in NetSuite. NetSuite also gives us these cool things called workbooks. Now you find them under analytics again. Think of these as a really simple Excel spreadsheet. So in Excel, you think about it, you open the Excel spreadsheet and you have tabs on the bottom. So I like to, and usually if you work like me, a lot of your tabs are like just core data. They're like data that eventually you're going to have a VLOOKUP tab, or you're going to have like a pivot table tab or something like that. In analytics, they have the same concept in a workbook. So the workbook, you have tabs, and the tabs can be, you can actually do a pivot table in one of these tabs. You can do graphs and charts and all kinds of fancy stuff. But really, if you're like me, using pivots. So pivot of what, you ask? Well, you're pivoting of the data sets. So you will add data sets into the workbook, much like you would add these like tabs in Excel that just have raw data in them. And then you'll create a tab with a pivot table, and you say, hey, I want to go make a pivot on that data set data over there. So I am not going to walk you through how to do that. That's almost a talk on itself, but I want y'all to be aware this functionality exists in NetSuite today. It is free. It's just use it. The other thing that's really interesting is that NetSuite gives us these pre-canned templates. So when you pull up analytics, somewhere in there, you'll see like there's a thing called templates, and there's like a whole bunch of examples that kind of help get you kick-started, or might actually just answer your question right off the bat without you having to recreate it. All right. So some kind of closing thoughts and tips on analytics. You know, you might be asking like, well, Mike, why do you just always just use analytics? That sounds great. The answer is no, and here's a couple reasons why. So first off, analytics data sets are not global searchable. So if you want to find an analytics data set, you can share them, and it's all that exists where you can share them to other people, but you have to go inside of that analytics tab, and like it's kind of its own little world. Like from in there, you can find things that were shared with me or things like that. But if you're in the global search in NetSuite, like you've got another tab open, you're looking at an invoice and you're like, oh, I need to go see my, recent sales orders thing. It's 2 clicks away versus just search calling recent sales orders. The other that's a biggie, let's be honest, is a biggie with analytics is it's slower. I'll be honest. Like analytics is generally slower. Sometimes it is brutally slower. Like you'll drop a column in and you're like, this thing's like not usable anymore. And then you take the column out. It's like, oh, wow, this is great. Um, this is one of those that it just, with power comes this slow. I mean, I understand from a database perspective why it is slower, but they'll be slower. It is worth noting that under Setup Enable Features, NetSuite, to address this slowness, they have this cached data in datasets concept where they will, if you select this on your dataset, what you basically tell NetSuite is, hey, while I'm asleep tonight, just go run this thing and get the results so that in the morning when I pull it up, the results are already there. So that's great from a speed perspective, but it's not like, if you need real time, kind of like watertight, it needs to be watertight as of right now. Yes, with the cache, you can click a little icon to run it now, but then it's slow again. Another tip on analytics is that they don't email. This makes me sad. I wish they would, because then I could do zero reports and all that, but there's no email capabilities in analytics. A good note about analytics that I'm just going to gloss over here is that you actually can link data sets together. So for those of y'all who are kind of dev-like or devs, in the world of tables and SQLs, you call them joins, like joining tables to one another. For the rest of us who are just, accountants, think of VLOOKUP. Like you have 2 tabs and you just want to like VLOOKUP from one tab to the other based on a shared thing. Analytics supports that out of the box. So you'll have to hunt around, but just be aware, yes, you can get 2 different data sets and join them together and then report on that. And then a final note is, which will come up later as we talk about SuiteQL, there's a little icon in the upper right-hand corner. It's under Actions, I think, or something like that, where you can say Export to SuiteQL. So this is really valuable if you have a report you've created in analytics and it just works, but you've got somebody who's running Power BI or some tool like that, and they've hooked into NetSuite, and you're like, hey, go recreate that in Power BI. Don't have them go recreate it, please and thank you. Just have them do this export this, or you do the export to SuiteQL, copy, paste, stick it in an email, done. So be aware that's a thing. All right, CP question. Corey, take it away.
Okay, I will pop up this CPE question. Hopefully it's the same as what Mike is showing. Yeah, it looks good. Okay, CPE question number 7 is launched. About a minute or so to answer this question. Which NetSuite technology can be used to create a pivot table without using scripting or an external spreadsheet? About 30 seconds left for the CPE question. All right, I'll go ahead and end the poll and share the results. And Mike?
Yep. So the answer here, it's a little bit tricky, but the answer here is analytics only. So the key in the question was without using scripting or spreadsheets. So with searches, you're going to use spreadsheets. With SuiteQL, you're going to use scripting just to run SuiteQL, and we'll cover that in a minute here. So analytics is really the way if you want to do a pivot table natively in NetSuite without any other kind of tools. Very important though for the others of y'all, just like, yes, you can do pivots in NetSuite native. Highly recommend analytics. Try it. All right, let's move on. We're going to move on to SuiteQL. So I'm going to cover these. You're not going to be a SuiteQL expert, but I want you to be aware that these two new technologies, that they exist and how you would use them. So SuiteQL is a NetSuiteism on what is commonly known as SQL, or it's a structured query language, I think SQL stands for. SuiteQL has been around for a couple of years. It is free. It's just in NetSuite, but it's really hard to know it's there. So we're going to kind of walk you through there. It is incredibly powerful. So for those of us propeller heads who are devs and like doing things in a dev-like way, this is like the go-to tool for reporting. It's either searches or, well, analytics sometimes, but this really, it's just, you can pretty much do anything with SuiteQL. SuiteQL uses something called the records catalog. I'm going to show that a little bit later. We had a little chat going earlier in this meeting about the records catalog. So I'll show you guys that. That's actually really valuable. It's basically the data dictionary. SuiteQL's data dictionary, oh, by the way, SuiteQL and analytics use the exact same data dictionary. Save searches use almost the same, but not quite the same. So like, save searches are a little bit different from what you find in analytics and SuiteQL. One key note, which kind of amazes me, is that NetSuite still hasn't provided a native screen for using SuiteQL. But fortunately, Tim Dietrich, which I gave his link here, he made this unbelievably incredibly useful tool called the SuiteQL Query Tool, which I see he's got a new version out. I haven't tried that out yet, but for those of y'all who use what I like to call the Tim tool, he's got a new version out. I'm excited to try that. But the Tim tool is free. It's a script you have to install on your system. Highly recommended. On the right-hand side is a little screenshot. You put your SQL in, you click the run button, and you get results in the bottom. It's incredibly useful. And then SuiteQL complies with the Connect, NetSuite2.com Analytics Connect. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think for those of y'all, which is probably the majority of people in this call, like most of y'all aren't, SQL ninjas or data analysts or anything like that. But if you have somebody in your company who is one of those people, one of those people who they typically run in Power BI or Domo or some, Microsoft SQL something or another, they are going to look at NetSuite and they're going to be like, oh, searches, right? They're going to roll their eyes. Oh my God, save search, please no. Or the analytics are going to be like, I just want to do a left outer join. Like if you hear these things from them, the answer is go install the Tim tool, give them access to the Tim tool, and then start asking them to pull or to make reports for you. And they will be it will change their lives. You don't have to go get SuiteAnalytics Connect and all that stuff. They can do it straight in NetSuite with this tool. So that is very valuable to know, incredibly powerful if you know SQL. All right. The next thing we'll cover, which I think is almost the last, I might be running ahead of time. We're going to cover SuiteAnalytics Connect. So SuiteAnalytics Connect is not free, so this costs extra. And SuiteAnalytics Connect traditionally it's been known as an ODBC connection. Like ODBC is like Open Database Connection or something. I can't remember what the DC, data connection. Basically, what this allows is for you to take what are now known as BI tool, or business intelligence tool. So these again are your Tableau, your Domo, your Power BI, Adaptive. If you have any of those systems, or you're thinking of buying one of those systems, where you have like the, it's the dream. It's the one dashboard where you can see across all of your different systems. You will probably need this in NetSuite. You'll want to go and get the SuiteAnalytics Connect capability. Again, it costs extra, but it allows your BI tool to connect into NetSuite. And now the people who run your BI tool, they'll see all the NetSuite tables. They'll be able to run SQL on it, with SuiteQL and SQL on it. They'll just use it like they use everything else, right? So it allows your BI tools to just query data where they don't have to mess with saved searches or analytics data sets or anything like that. They just use their powerful tool. Another interesting use of this is, if you are writing an application or you have an application, like, your application is something you sell to your customers, for instance, in theory, you could connect your NetSuite system to your application and, query out of NetSuite and get it to your app. One thing about SuiteAnalytics Connect is it is read only. So you can't modify, there is no updating, inserting, deleting, anything like that. It is only a read-only system. This screen here, though, gives you an example of if you have SuiteAnalytics, if you buy it, what do you get for that? Well, you got this screen, basically. So it gives you an endpoint, a port, a data source, the account ID. These are all things you use in your BI system to connect to your SuiteAnalytics Connect endpoint. One thing I do want to, before I move on here, I want to show you guys not the records browser, the other browser, the records catalog. So if you are in NetSuite under Setup, all the way at the bottom, there's this thing called Records Catalog. And this is, in the early days before analytics was around, there was this thing called the SuiteScript Records Browser that you could find under Help. And it, as was in the chat, we had a little chat going there. The SuiteScript Records Browser is really kind of obtuse to navigate. It's kind of hard to understand what it's trying to tell you. This records catalog is way more intuitive. So let's say we want to know, like, a transaction. I want to do a transaction search thing, right? So you just type transaction and so it'll be here. I don't know why you have to double click, but you can click here, then click here. But this is that's the real amazing part. So you're going to get, hopefully it comes up here. You're going to get like the fields and the joins, which this is going very slow. Maybe, oh, here we go. So you'll get your field name. So here's the name of the field, and then here's the ID of the field, right? Which if you're in scripting, you're using these things all the time. If you're doing formulas and searches, this is a good way to find it too. Although Kelly's suggestion of using I think there's function or something like that in saved searches is always how I do that in searches. But this basically gives you all the fields in a transaction records, right? And then one of the interesting things it also tells you is like in transactions, you have lines, right? Or like the addresses, right? So you can click and hit this little drop down. It's like, oh, well, it joins to an address record for the billing address. And here's all the fields in the billing address, right? Like the subfields there, right? So this is really valuable. I got to tell y'all, if you're into scripting or if you're doing analytics, if you use analytics over searches, you'll use this kind of a lot. If you do SQL, you'll use this kind of a lot. And then the other thing that's in here are joins. Honestly, I find the joins in here. Like if it's joined, you'll see it over here, and you can click that, and it takes you to the screen for that record. But the joins, this was in our chat. It gives you kind of the both way joins. So it's like this joins to that, but that joins to this, right? So again, join is kind of a SQL terminology, but you don't have to be a SQL guru to kind of like noodle out what they're trying to tell you here. There's basically saying this transaction table is related to that transaction or that other table. And if you mouse over these things, it'll give you, for those of y'all who do SQL, this is really valuable. It gives you the on clause for if you want to do a join. And I think one of these is really helpful too. I can't remember. There's something else in here that's helpful on these little mousies. So just be aware that this is a thing that is really valuable, actually, is this setup records catalog. One other point to note on records catalogs is that there is a permission. I don't remember where it is. I think it's under lists. If you have a SQL person, like you're in an environment where you've got your data analyst person, right? And they do all that magic of making really magic reports, and you want them to run, say, the TIM tool and make reports for you, they're going to ask for this screen. I promise you. They're going to be like, hey, what's the data dictionary? This is it. So you give them some role. I don't know. You have some read-only role because, you don't need them in your GL and all that. And they're going to go to setup and they're going to mouse down. They'll be like, I don't see the records catalog, because you got to give their role that permission. So just be aware there's a permission for the records catalog. I think it's under list. You'll have to search. It's probably in SuiteAnalytics, but you have to search it. But there is a permission to give people access to this screen without them being admin. All right. Go back. I think we're almost, we're at the next CPEs. So Corey, you want to take it away?
Okay, I'll launch that CPE question number 8. Question is, what is the most standard way to search NetSuite data by using external BI tools such as Power BI, Tableau, or Adaptive? 20 more seconds for the CPE question. And Mike, I think we should be wrapping up. Is that right?
Yeah, I think I'm on this last slide. So yep, that's good.
Okay, all right. Okay, 5 more seconds. CPE question number 8. All right, I'll go ahead and end this poll and share the results.
All right. So the most standard way to connect external BI tools is gonna be SuiteAnalytics or the Analytics Connect service. You could probably kludge other things, but let's be honest, Analytics Connect, call your NetSuite rep, and that's the way.
Okay.
All right. Look here. I think that was my presentation. So thank you, everybody. I hope everybody picked up a tip or trick somewhere in there.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. So a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to repost the charted raffle link. I think it should be fixed now. So if you haven't gone to that raffle, you can do that now and fill it out for an Amazon gift card. And at this point, we're going to turn it over for our last little section here to Ryan Longnecker. And he's going to talk about a tip and trick related to saved searches. And then after that, we'll have our open forum. So Ryan, I'll turn it over to you for just a short.
Awesome. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Cool. I'm gonna share my screen. Can you guys see my NetSuite and my ChatGPT?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you guys for having me for the tips and tricks here. I'm just going to talk quickly about saved searches and how I've been using AI to help me move things along when I don't know what to do or I have any questions. Obviously, there's Suite Answers, there's forums, there's our user group, there's our LinkedIn forum. This is just another additional resource and tool that I've been using that I would recommend everybody check out if they get stuck. So My tip is kind of adding on to Kelly's presentation based around formulas. So formulas are very flexible and can be used to provide lots of non-standard information, but sometimes you might not know how to write a formula or where to find the formula. And this is a tool to help with that. So on the right-hand side, I have a transaction search. It is based on the main line only, and it's for sales orders. And one thing that I wanted to find out was maybe on my sales orders, I have commissions that I pay based on my sales orders to the sales reps. So I want to find out 5% of the total amount of my sales order, so that way I can pay out my commissions. So again, I can look through all the different tools to find that exact formula, but I use ChatGPT. So this is not the best prompt, but it did work. So I said, I want to see 5% of the amount to get a commission total. And ChatGPT gave me a few different formulas that I could use. I used this top one here because it's the most simple. So basically, I went to my results. I created the formula numeric column just like it said here, which I did right there. I copied and pasted the formula right in, and I gave it a custom label. So if I run this search, if anything is wrong, just like Kelly said, it will tell me if the field is missing or if there's an error or anything like that. So I have my list of my sales orders, and then I have my 5% commission column. So based off of my amount, now I know either I'm a sales manager or I'm a sales rep. I know how much of a commission I'm making off of each of my sales. So that's the first thing, the first tip that I wanted to share. I want to kind of continue with that. So maybe I want to only pay commission for 5% of the amount if the total is over $100. So I changed my prompt a little bit to add on to this. So I said I want to get the amount times 5%, but only transactions over $100. So again, I have my formula here. It tells me exactly what type of column I'm going to be adding in. I copied and pasted that right in, and then I added it right into here. So if it's not over $100, it puts it to 0. And now I have my new commission amount if the original amount is over $100. So if you're struggling and don't know like where to find formulas, but you can articulate it in plain English, I would recommend checking out using ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, and just copying and pasting the formulas right into your search, and hopefully that'll help you out. The last one that I tried out was I have an image on my customer record that is connected to my transactions. So I wanted to take that image and display it in my search. So I said, I have a URL field with an image in it. Can you walk me through the steps and formula to add it into my transaction search? So it told me to enable HTML formulas. So it walked me through that step. I went through and enabled that. And then it gave me a formula here for putting in an image into my search. So it just gave me kind of a generic custom URL field here that I knew is not correct because I didn't tell it exactly what I was going to use. So I knew I had to update that. And once I updated that and copied it all in and updated this section here, it is able to use HTML and add in a nice little image into my search there. So if you have images, maybe logos, maybe you have, some information that's more visual. You can also add it into your saved searches. And ChatGPT and AI can help you do that. Those are my tips and tricks. One quick shout out I want to mention is our next meeting in March is all based around AI, like Corey said. We're going to touch on what AI is, the basics and 101 of using AI in NetSuite. So as many features as we can talk about there. So hopefully you guys can join us for that. And that's my tip and trick for today. I'll also add
Great.
the prompts into the chat for you guys.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it. And so that ends the presentation part of our meeting. We'll go ahead and switch over to our open forum. And Mike, if you don't mind hosting that for us, we'll
Yep.
I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, and I'll stop our recording.